One of the first things WHIN wanted to do when we decided to start looking at women and climate change was to write a literature review, and the purpose of this was to get a really strong evidence base for our work, because we found that there was quite a bit of information about how climate change affects women in third world countries, but very little about first world countries, and it's often not immediately obvious to people why it should be relevant to us at all. So basically I started doing research on that topic, and it has branched out until we're now addressing a very wide range of things, which is really good. So basically we have found that climate change will affect women in Melbourne disproportionately to men, and for a very wide range of reasons. So we can probably summarise them in 3 categories. Firstly, because women tend to live a lot longer than men, there are a lot of problems arising from old age, including poverty and ill health, which leaves women much more vulnerable to the effects of climate change. And secondly, there's the fact that women tend to be poorer than men, and this economic disadvantage just has so many problems. So it causes problems with housing and transport and food insecurity, and everything just stems on from that lack of material resources that women generally have. And then the third factor is the socialised roles of women in society. So this means that women do a lot more caring, and so anyone who is affected by climate change in terms of health, especially children and elderly people and disabled people, all of whom are more vulnerable to health problems resulting from climate change. Basically, the increased burden of care of these people is most likely to fall on women. So that is just increasing women's already heavy workload to ridiculous proportions. And there are cases, like for example with rural women, where this just becomes to the point where mental health issues are a real problem. And
I think another example, Cathy, would be women living in vulnerable housing because they're poor, so they have no choice but to live in housing that's in areas that might be vulnerable to extreme weather events.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the quality of the housing itself.
Yeah, which may leave them much more vulnerable to heat waves and floods, and even being cold in winter. That's less of a climate change issue.
Yes, with the cost of retrofitting houses or installing solar panels.
It's often just completely out of reach of women, especially women who are single parents, for example. Yeah, so we're basically, it's been really good for us to identify these social and environmental determinants of women's health in order for us to base our work around doing what we can to improve women's health.